Scientists may have discovered dark oxygen being created at the bottom of the ocean without photosynthesis. We are creating oxygen necessary for life, but without that essential process known as photosynthesis that we all learned about in our 5th grade science class. And we're actually going to jump over to a BBC article that explains this better, a slightly different headline here, better pictures of the ocean. But what scientists were doing were researching at depths of about 5 kilometers in a very deep part of the ocean between Hawaii and Mexico, and they discovered that oxygen appears to be produced by naturally occurring metallic nodules, which split seawater, which is H2O, into hydrogen and oxygen. Now, several mining companies immediately wanted to collect these nodules, and marine scientists are mortified because they don't know anything about this process, how fragile it is, how resilient it is, if that'll disrupt the entire thing, what it could do for the greater environment. And this actually is a picture of the nodules that we're talking about. They're basically rocks that sit at the bottom of the ocean. Each one of these little dark specks is going to be a rock about the size of your hand that is operating a little bit like a battery. The scientist that first discovered it in 2013 kind of didn't know what to make of it. He ignored it. Maybe the readings were wrong. Maybe there was some process he didn't understand. But when they conducted another round of research into the topic, they discovered that these nodules form when dissolved metals in seawater collect on fragments of shell that settle to the bottom of the ocean, and that these nodules contain elements like lithium, cobalt, and copper, all of which are needed to make batteries. So here we are picking up one of these to take back to study. It looks like a perfectly spherical dark matter, like Nibbler's poop from Futurama, to be honest with you. But what they discovered is that they're not just like batteries, they do act like batteries. They basically are batteries. For example, if you put a battery into seawater, it starts fizzing, and that's because the electric current is actually splitting the seawater into oxygen and hydrogen. I think oxidizing is the right one. No, oxidizing is slightly different. But it creates just enough electricity to do that, which in this case is about the size of a typical AA battery. You can actually see them testing one of these ocean rocks here and getting a voltage in the background. So basically, heavy elements and sediments are piling up on top of shells, which are creating little nodules of cobalt, lithium, etc. that are acting like batteries, creating a small current in the bottom of the ocean and producing oxygen for all of not just deep sea life, but all sea life to breathe. And we're calling it dark oxygen because the process isn't fully understood. Kind of like dark matter, we're not 100% there yet. So until we do understand this, dark oxygen will probably be the moniker that it sticks with. Hilariously, Amazon Alexa had no profit timeline and was costing Amazon $25 billion over 4 years, including $10 billion in just 1 year. So when you average that out, every single year they were losing the entire GDP of a country like Cayman Islands, Barbados, Liberia, relatively small countries, an outrageous amount of money being lost. And I want to go through this article and just talk about how much Amazon spent on this product that I personally think very little of. It's a very expensive smart speaker. So this huge loss occurred between 2017 and 2021. And then they mentioned that in 2022, Amazon was set to lose $10 billion on the device. That'll bring it up to about $35 billion. They claim to have sold about 500 million of these devices. And from their internal documents, they say there is no profit timeline. So let's talk about how they were able to bleed so much for so long. One of the biggest ones is that the unit that created this was allowed a lot of wiggle room in terms of financial success. They were allowed to fail a little bit in order to show innovation or have potential for long-term gains. But this went well beyond loss leading. Loss leading is when you sell a device with the idea that you might lose a little bit of money on the device, but you'll make more back. Game consoles typically work this way. If you buy an Xbox, Microsoft might actually lose a little bit of money, but they'll make it back on the game licensing fees. So the Amazon said, we're worried that we hired 10,000 people to make a smart timer. Oh my God. An Amazon spokesperson told the Wall Street Journal that more than half the people with Echo have shopped with it, but wouldn't provide any particular specifics. One of the big problems that they dealt with was having a vague metric of success. Reportedly developed in 2011 by economists, they measured downstream impact, which assigns a financial value to a product or service based on how customers spend within Amazon's ecosystem after buying it. So even if people weren't using the device, even if people weren't making purchases on the device, even if people were returning the device, they were measuring how much money a person spent on Amazon after buying Echo as a measure of success. And I think that this ignores the exponential growth and influence of Amazon since 2011, which is just crazy to me. This metric also resulted in revenue sometimes being counted twice for Amazon Echo, and this was according to former executives that spoke to the Wall Street Journal. Right now, Amazon is involved in a Hail Mary attempt to try to fix this by making a subscription-based AI Alexa so that you can pay $5 to $10 a month for a generative AI that you can talk to and control things, maybe make purchases for you. I think that people are not using Amazon Echo for anything more than being a smart timer, maybe playing music, maybe purchasing some sort of very basic groceries or something. And I don't think people are going to want to pay $5 or $10 to have AI there to spy on you even harder than you're already being spied on with this device. I've got some great news for the health of the planet, which is that renewable electricity is going to outstrip coal next year, and this is according to the International Energy Agency, which is a Paris-based intergovernmental organization that is essentially a think tank and advisory board that tries to advise countries on good energy policies, which these days is primarily green, headed by experts in their field. And it's one of those sort of international agencies that doesn't have a lot of enforcement power, regulatory power, but they do help set standards and goals. And of course, we have this lovely picture of all the solar panels here and a guy mowing underneath them. But according to the IEA, which is basically the biggest energy organization in the world, the leading researcher in basically everything, electricity demand is set to rise about 4% this year, and that's up 2% from 2023. However, if I can find this, I almost skipped past and buried the lead here. They said they project the amount of electricity from renewable resources worldwide is set to surpass output from coal-fired plants for the first time in 2025. So next year, we'll be making more green energy than coal. However, I want to keep in mind that the energy needs of the planet are growing. So while we are getting cheaper wind and coal, China and India is therefore burning cheaper coal. So coal is still expanding. Coal's not going away, but it's only expanding in other countries because as we use less of it, the product becomes cheaper. So there's a bit of a weird trade-off there. But the good thing is that renewable sources are going to be providing 35% of global energy supply next year, which is up 30% from just 2023. The trend on how much of our energy we're getting from green sources is like almost exponential growth. That curve is just going up, 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 up. It looks like we're making space nuclear again as Rolls-Royce gets a $6 million grant to develop its extremely ambitious nuclear space reactor, which isn't really powering a whole ship like you would see here in the image, but rather it is a space microreactor that is designed to power moon bases. I'll go ahead and play a little bit of this video where they show you some of the concept art. Basically, it's supposed to last multiple decades. It's designed to be small, transportable, to not really need new fuel. The little rods you're seeing are the control rods there. And the idea behind this is that it powers the spacecraft or powers the lunar base or powers where you land. And by power the spacecraft, I don't mean the engines, I mean the onboard systems, the air filtration, the operating, all that sort of stuff. When it comes to engines, there's actually a different piece of technology that's in the works right now, which is a nuclear spaceship, and we're building them for real. The last time we built one, I believe, was the late 60s. We're going to go through the article here. And the difference between a traditional combustion engine and a nuclear is that a combustion engine literally just combusts gas. That's kind of all it does, is it burns the gas. But a nuclear engine will actually feed a fluid, which is typically liquid hydrogen, through a superheated process like a nuclear reactor and get it so hot that it forcibly expels out the back of the device. And the reason this is good is because it weighs less and is more efficient. Basically you get more mileage out of your rocket, if you want to think of it that way. So NASA's rolling out money for companies like Rolls-Royce to develop versions of this technology, albeit Rolls-Royce chose a smaller one. One of the first reactors we ever did this one was the Kiwi 1 in 1959, which you can see a picture of here. It didn't take off or do anything. It was just a reactor that existed. I'm going to go down here. Here's the next gen Nerva engine, which is a little bit of a, I think this is a prototype. I don't think we've actually attached this to anything yet, but you can see you've got the nuclear control drum, the reactor core, the shielding, the complicated tubing, turbo pumps, and of course, the part that expels all of the gas at the end. And this entire article just has a couple of interesting examples of like prototype nuclear engines. All in all, I think this is a great idea. I think bringing nuclear technology to space is probably going to be the only way that we manage to navigate the long-term power supply needs, both small scale for the ships and the bases like the Rolls-Royce engine, and large scale like this giant blast-off Nerva engine rocket. And it doesn't actually generate any more nuclear waste. The gas that blows out is just regular old liquid hydrogen or liquid nitrogen gas that isn't irradiated in any way, to the best of my knowledge. So I think this is awesome.